So we're entering the water here from shore. We're going to swim down the slope to the Islander wreck. Get a little bit of turbidity in the water, but you can just see the wreck starting to appear out of the gloom. And this would be the port side of the Islander. And this is down at a depth of about 25 feet. And this object right here that we're approaching is where the paddle wheel would be on the port side. Tie off our diver's line, flag, and float to this. So we'll mark the spot. This is just a little bit of the decking that's on this side of the ship. You can see that a lot of it's deteriorated, it's gone. So Cindy's securing her line. You all set, Cindy? Good, thanks. So now we're going to swim along the port side here. We're heading towards the bow. And we can see a little bit of the hull below us. And there's some deterioration from the decking up on top here. The boards have pulled away from the wreck. And the wreck has some zebra mussels covering it, not as many as there used to be. Approaching the bow of the wreck, and this right here would be a hawser of some sort that the lines would pass through. And you secured your ship next to shore. This would be the bow of the Islander. And this would all be stuff from the water line down. Since the ship had burned, all the top superstructure is missing. Take us from on the starboard side of the wreck.
How deep is this?
We're probably about 40 feet deep down here, 45 feet. And you can see how a lot of the decking off the bow is also missing. You lost all your superstructure on top. There still was decking on it, but over the years the ship's deteriorated and probably divers have pulled away a lot of the decking to gain access inside the wreck. I can remember my first dive on this wreck almost 40 years ago, and there was quite a bit of decking on this wreck, and it wasn't as collapsed as it appears to be now. And you can see some of the sides of the ship here that have flattened out. And as we swim a little bit further down the side of the wreck, you'll notice on the bottom, on the left side there, you've got that same feature that we had tied our line to over on the port side. And in this area is where the other side of the paddle wheeler would be, and this was a side paddle wheeler. And of course a shaft would run straight across the wreck, connecting the two paddle wheelers. Not many fish on the wreck today, but we'll usually see bass, gobies, sunfish, some perch, occasionally a carp. And here you have a lot more zebra mussels covering this side of the wreck. The decking is shifted and fallen off, so it looks pretty much like a wreck more than a ship now. So here we're swimming along the stern of the wreck, and we can see some of the rail has separated from the wreck, and there's some debris down here and some fish. And as we move off the wreck, we can see some broken crockery. This site here used to hold a lot of old bottles and junk and things that people had thrown off over the years. Now we're heading back up towards what's left of the stern of the wreck. We're about in the middle of the wreck, and we're swimming back up towards the bow. And this is a good spot where you can see some of the construction of the beams and the ribs. And a lot of the planking's been pulled off in this area. And as we approach amidships here, we're going to start to see more of the machinery, the mechanisms that move this ship. A lot of gears and boilers, pipes. Now we've reached the spot here where the paddle wheelers have been supported. This is where the axle would have rested. And there'd be a paddle wheel on each end of this. And now we're going from the deep part to the shallow part. A lot of the decking is gone, so you can see right down inside the wreck here. And it's been filled in with a lot of silt and shells, and that also gets blown out after a while, and we can see some clean wood here that was covered up. And there are a few tight areas and swim-throughs on the wreck, which we don't recommend divers get into because this wreck is still collapsing and could be dangerous. we approach the bow, you can actually see a little doorway here. And that was probably beneath the decks and may have led into a room that probably held the anchor lines, or a storage room of some sort. And again, a lot of the decking's been pulled off up in the bow here. Here we are, all the way back up to the bow of the wreck. We'll take a peek down inside here. There's another look inside that little compartment up in the bow. As we swim along here, you can actually see down inside that room. And here we are looking at the bow area, and there appears to be a diver actually coming out of the wreck. It is a tight fit in there. So we're basically going to do another swim around the wreck again here. So here you can see the sides of the ship laying down. There's a lot of turbidity in the water here because we swam around the wreck one time and you kicked up a silt. So that will stay in the water for a little bit. We've seen a lot of turbidity in the wreck after we swam it a few times. So that's why it looks like you'll get this stuff in the water, but the currents usually will blow it away. The visibility will clear up again.
So what are we looking at here?
Well, we just swam up onto the shallow side of the wreck, so we're on the starboard side, the part that's closer to shore. And there's a little bass swimming around there. And yeah, this is an old scale that somebody threw down. Landed on the wreck, and it's been there for quite a number of years. And dragged over here by divers, and they just leaned it up against the wreck. So we're going to examine the side of the ship along this side. You can see some algae growth. Red algae on there and green algae. And you can see how good the visibility is here. We've seen the diver on the other side. Probably about 25 feet right here. You can see the zebra mussels covering the wreck. Off in the distance in the right corner there is parts of the
This is a beautiful day for diving. We've probably got about 30-foot visibility to this wreck.
To the wharf. Cindy's swimming by that right now.
And this would be directly in front of the Cornwall Brothers?
Just about. And there's actually a whole series of pilings and support beams that run along the waterfront there to help hold up
This
the
diver here is
shoreline.
exhibiting excellent buoyancy control,
pad,
not touching the wreck.
Capt Thompson's that used to be next door.
Now we're swimming along the shallow side of the wreck, the port side, heading up towards the bow.
And we're heading back towards that scale. And that looks like that might be part of the scale possibly too. That looks like a steel girder. It's probably from the wharf. It's actually part of the wreck. It's hard to tell what's what down there sometimes.
And we've made it all the way around to our tie-up point. This is where a lot of divers will tie up to the wreck as they do their dives. There's a few more gobies. We've got quite a number of these up in the river. And it looks like we have found a little friend here.
We're going to look at the wreck a little bit deeper on the hull, down towards the bottom. And you can see a lot of the deterioration over the planking is starting to separate. Holes are appearing between the slats of wood. This wreck sunk around 1909. So it's been down there for over 100 years.
But you saw it when it was only sunk for 60 years.
Just about, yeah.
And how was it different then?
Well, the wreck was probably more intact back then. I mean, as years go by, you're going to have wear and tear from diver activity on the wreck, because it's probably the most dived wreck in New York State. It's easily accessible. It's 50 feet from shore. It's a popular dive site for recreational divers, classes. When you go up to the bow there, you're going to start to get into the 35, 40 foot of water. And then as you swim around the bow, you'll be in about 45 feet of water. And there are some drop-offs and slopes just beyond the bow there. Here we're showing we're in 37 feet of water. And I have 1,235 psi left in my tank. See quite a ways back on the right side there too. Visibility here is probably about 25 feet.
This flag was not original.
No. It's got 50 stars on it. We just passed by one of the line hawsers there. And on this side of the wreck, it's broken away a lot more. And the wreck's probably been shifting over the years. As currents flow through there and the silt moves around, the wreck starts to lose its support and it starts to collapse.
So is this the side of the wreck that's fallen over?
Yes.
Is it fallen away from its original ship and just sort of fallen to the ground?
Well, if you imagine, the wreck is just kind of like splitting and falling apart side by side, so it's just separating. And there's a lot of silt that's actually filled inside the hull there.
And what's this item here?
That would be where a side of a wreck would join to the hull. Usually it's a support beam of some sort. The decking could lay on top of that and it would be connected to the side of the hull.
Do you ever see any of the charred pieces from where it burned? Or is that just so covered with
It's covered with growth, so it's kind of hard to distinguish. But I would imagine that once it burned down to the water line and it sunk, they probably salvaged any machinery off of it that they thought they could reuse again or recycle. And then they just left the rest of it there. It's probably deep enough where it wasn't going to be a hazard to navigation, so they had no reason to have to pick it up and pull it back out again.
What area are we in now?
That's the stern area, and you can see a concrete pad right there, and that was probably part of the wharf that they had there. And again, in the upper left-hand corner, you can see the hook there. All along the waterfront in A Bay, they had a wharf system set up, and the ships would come into the Cornwall Brothers area of the wharf there and tie up and take on passengers. And the Islander also was used to transport mail for the Postal Service, so they would take on mail and drop it off there. And next door you had the Thousand Island House Hotel, so you probably had a lot of people from there getting on board the steamers and going on tours. There's a lot more debris around the back of the wreck there. Here you can see a lot of the gobies that are all over the St. Lawrence River. They're not native. Sometimes you can dive this wreck and it's so silty, or there's so much turbidity that you really are not sure where you're at. We're actually heading in the middle of the wreck up towards the bow, and we're looking at just about the center of the ship where some of the machinery is that was associated with the paddle wheels. And up in here, there's like a lot of pipes and things that may have had something to do with the boiler system on the wreck. This gives you a little close-up look of how they actually built the hull. It was the ribs, and they put the planks on the outside and then plank the inside. And in the upper left there is a bollard that was on the wharf. Back to the beginning. I think it's probably about time to pull our line and head up.